Jones, you are on.
Great. Thank you, Katie, and good afternoon, everyone. As Katie mentioned, I'm Sheila Jones, and I'm Dean of Instructional Support at GRCC, where I'm starting my 5th year. Prior to coming to Michigan, I served as a history faculty member and administrator at Broward College in Fort Lauderdale. I'm kind of a newbie to Twitter. I have to start out by saying that and admitting it. I kind of half created an account a few years ago, which I really did nothing with until January. And that's when I heard about Dr. Robinson's #NCC stigma campaign. So I went back on Twitter, finished creating my account, and then have been slowly building my relationship with it ever since. And like many of us who said this at Wednesday's opening session, and as Katie said too recently, I found the platform very useful during this time and social distancing amid the global pandemic, and have been happy to participate in the MCSS Birds of a Feather Twitter chats over the last few months. It's my honor to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Mordecai Brownlee currently serves as the Vice President of Student Success at St. Philip's College, a public community college in San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Brownlee also serves as an adjunct professor at Morgan State University's School of Education and Urban Studies and the University of Charleston School of Business and Leadership. In addition, he is an education columnist with EdSurge. You can learn more about Dr. Brownlee via his website. It's drmordecai.com, where he outlines his mission to empower the lives of all through education. Dr. Brownlee tweets using the handle @itsdrmordecai, where he has over 29.7K followers, and I'm one of those followers. I thought I'd share a fun fact that I learned in our first Twitter conversation, and this was between Dr. Brownlee, Katie, and myself. And we know Dr. Robinson has this connection too, but he wasn't on that conversation. But we're all connected to Northwest Ohio, or the 419, as we affectionately call it. I encourage all of you to sign up and follow Dr. Brownlee for his frequent Good Morning Educators posts, offering brief yet powerful advice. One of my favorite posts of Dr. Brownlee's is his recent video offering a consideration to faculty about synchronous online classes. I won't ruin it for you, but please go watch the September 9th video to see what I mean. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Mordecai Brownlee to lead off our Real Values in a Virtual World session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, and thank you so much to Katie and to the MCSS family. So excited to be with you all on today. Good afternoon, educators. So listen, I know that I only have a short amount of time with you, so I am going to jump right into it and making sure also that I can see the presentation. So Katie, am I sharing on this end?
Yes, I think that's what your preference was. If not, I have the slides up and I can share here.
You know what? Let's go for it, because I am fearful that something may happen and I don't want it to.
Sounds good. I will share, and if I don't follow your cadence, let me know into advance, please. Oh, sorry.
Yep, it's all right. See, she already muted me, folks. So she wanted me to end my presentation that quick. Well, listen, it was a pleasure talking with you. No, I'm stop. Okay, well, listen.
I was trying to mute myself, to be honest, but all right, go for it.
Good afternoon, everybody. So excited to be with you and just grateful for the opportunity to be with fellow educators and talk about digital engagement. For so long and too long, it's been a bit of a scary platform for educators to want to engage for a number of reasons. Maybe if my students found out that I was on Twitter, they'll start asking me weird things that I'm not ready for. Just email me so I can have it on record. Those days are over. And so now we are in this realm of students really, or I should say prospective students. They're looking at who from the institutions that they're considering to attend, who is engaged in digital learning, digital engagement, who is on Twitter, who is on Instagram, to get a sense of what's happening at that institution, to get a sense of what's happening with those leaders, to get a sense of, you know, I'm thinking about taking this class from this professor, this instructor. Can I get a sense of who they are as a person? And so a lot of that is happening more and more and more, and it's really our new reality. So I want to encourage you on today, if there was any takeaway, it's understanding that the water is fine. Get involved with social media. Now, understand this. This is what I will tell you, is understanding social media, social engagement, digital engagement. You are a representation of the institution that you serve, right? And so that responsibility that comes with it, or that entity or that organization that you serve. And so, you know, part of that balance that we'll talk about today is understanding that as educators, we have grand opportunities in front of us to use this platform to educate in ways that you may not be aware of. Next slide, please, Katie. So what I want you to do really quickly for me in the chat box. Now listen up, educators. I don't want you to press submit yet. I want you to type it in the chat, and I will tell you when to press enter. Okay. Now, with that said, what I want you to do in the chat box really quickly, think about your institutional mission statement, or your organization, if you will, organization. Think about your organizational mission statement. Now, listen, this is a great time for you to look up into the sky as though you're really thinking, and actually you're typing and Googling the mission of your institution, right? Which I won't tease you about that, but just look really profound as you are really typing and Googling, okay? Now, I want you to take that mission statement and I want you to look at it. Look at the elements if you're looking at it, or if you know it by heart, right? Think about the elements of that mission statement. I worked at a university. My previous institution was a university out of Charleston, West Virginia. And part of what President Welch continued to have us do every meeting that we started, he wanted us to recite the mission of the University of Charleston. And so it's one of those things where you just get used to hearing the mission every day. You may be in an environment like that where you're frequently are being exposed to your institutional mission, and perhaps you're not, but we'll talk a little bit about this here very shortly. So hopefully by now, I'm not asking you to copy and paste your mission statement. Look at the elements of your institutional mission statement. And I want you to pick out an element that really sticks out to you. Maybe it's the word empowerment, right? Maybe there's a term in there that speaks to productive citizenship, right? Maybe there's a term in there that speaks to enlightened living. Maybe there's a term in there that speaks to creation of opportunities or service, right? Look at that mission statement for me. Pull just that element that you really like, just that one little element, and drop it into the chat. And here on the count of 3, I am going to have you hit enter, okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Press enter. Let's see what we have. Awesome. Okay, let's see what we've got. Accessible, achieve goals, enriching lives, inspire. Accessible, high quality education, connection, where success begins. I love that. Change lives, student support, responsiveness. That's huge, especially now more than ever. Enriching the lives of our students and communities. Excellent. Quality. We foster diversity, inclusion, understanding, and acceptance. Love it. Provide leadership, lifelong learning, community. Relevant. Yeah, I love that. Enriching community, empower people. Thank you all so much. And as you continue to think about other elements, by all means, put that in the chat. Next slide, please, Katie. So as we talk about our digital engagement, here's the one thing I want you to know. Know that you are an ambassador for your institution. You are an ambassador for your organization. But more importantly, you are an educator, okay? And so part of what I have made my mission in life, I have a personal mission statement. My personal mission statement is to empower people and to build systems that empower people. I'll say that again. This is my personal mission statement. It is to empower people and to build systems that empower people. Education just works for me. Now, what I had to find along my path was what facet of education was I going to be involved in. I'll never forget it. Before I really decided to dive into working in higher education, I worked in a middle school. And I remember I walked in, it was, I'm thinking middle school, I'm thinking about all the movies that I have been exposed to, and that the children will just run to me, that the youth will just run to me, and we will hold hands together and we would change lives. And I'll never forget it. I walked down the hallway and I was just assigned a class as a co-teacher, and a gentleman walks past me. And I said, "Hey, sir, excuse me, can you tell me where the men's room is?" And he says, "Oh, yes, sir, it's down that way." And I'm really thinking I am meeting one of the faculty members, except one of the teachers came out of the room and said, "So-and-so, get back to class." And I said, "Hold on, whoa, how old are you?" I mean, full goatee, the whole nine. I said, "Hold on now, 7th grade, okay? At that point, I realized that something had happened in life, and what I thought I was going to experience is not what I was going to experience. Needless to say, my middle school experience was not what I thought it was going to be, but I found my way into higher education, which really worked for me, and my heart is out for everybody that works in the middle school system. Now, with that said, let's talk about, as educators, and understanding that we have, yes, middle school staff are very brave souls. I pray for them every day. So love the chat there. So as educators, we have a grand opportunity in front of us to always educate, not only just in the instructional sense, but also through this platform of Twitter. And that's what I want you to leave today understanding. We can embrace all aspects of the mission. And as we are looking, even at the chat, looking at other aspects of mission statements at other institutions, you have a chance to say, okay, I'm going to take this element. Maybe it's about empowering lives. And I can, maybe on a daily basis, maybe it's every other day, maybe it's once a week, get involved in social media of some form, some facet, and tweet, say something about the advancement of the mission. If it's about empowering lives, how can you that day be a part of the expansion, the advancement of the academy, the advancement of educating and empowering the lives of others by a tweet that you may say? Maybe it's an encouraging tweet, but it's something that empowers the life of someone else. Maybe looking at some of these other ones, quality of life, right? Quality of life. Imagine that you're with your family on the weekend. You've got your kids, you've got your loved ones, your significant other. You take a picture, you post that. You put an encouraging message with that. Well, it's so much more than what you may think. You never know, and I've had students tell me this because I post my children frequently, and my wife, whom I met in community college, posts photos of us frequently, and I put that on there. And my students have told me, you know what? I come from a single parent household, and just seeing you and your family kind of gives me a sense of, you know, what family can look like, what a quality of life could look like, or the visits in different places you take your family. And so you never know how those images are encouraging your students. It's encouraging others. I myself am a product of a single parent household. And so you have these certain things that you aspire for. Well, imagine, as we all know, especially in social media, there's enough negativity out there. Imagine if you can post something that advances the life of someone else, gives them a sense of purpose, gives them a sense of understanding about just encouragement and life and how they should view life and the perspectives of that. And all of that is the advancement of the mission. So I see my time here. Let me speed up. Capture the mission. So while you're on campus, when you do return to campus, or maybe you're working in a limited space on campus, but there's opportunities for you to snap pictures with students and colleagues whenever that is feasible and acceptable to do so. But maybe it's taking a picture while you're on your campus, or something about education, or something that advances the mission or supports the institution, and you could take a picture of that. You're capturing the mission. Certainly when we are in post-COVID world, but pre-COVID, I would frequently snap pictures of me with the students in different activities. I'm capturing the mission in action. Promote the mission. What is it that you can do for your institution to promote its mission in action, and just capture various aspects of it as we look at that empowerment and access and the advancement of our communities? There's opportunities there to really think in that mindset, and then be an example of the mission in action. More than anything, you know, I will tell you that especially in today's time, you can see the genuineness of certain individuals as they interact in digital engagement, right? You can kind of get a sense of when something has been staged, especially now more than ever. I can get a sense of, you know, that so-and-so should stop acting like they talk to students. They haven't talked to students since 1986. I mean, you can kind of get a sense of some of these folks that are really just putting on a facade and that they've been staged. And so I would encourage you to be genuine, and you operate and move in a facet that works best for you. Be genuine with who you are, what you do, what your engagement, what's going to work for you. Next slide, please, Katie. So as I come to a close, as we wrap this up, and I look forward to conversations with you all, and again, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Just the major takeaways. Number one, get involved, okay? Get involved. Number two, understand that there are so many opportunities for you to advance the mission of the institution as an educator and empower the lives of others through digital engagement, okay? Be creative, be genuine, but really stretch yourself, be willing, and never take for granted that those words, those pictures that you post, the impact of those images, the impact of those texts. And with that said, There is a book that was just released by a fellow educator and a friend of mine, Dr. Josie Alquist. I really wanted you to see this because Josie, I'm so proud of Josie. Josie this week just released this book and it's on Amazon. You can check it out. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. There's several educators that have been featured in this book, and what she did as a former student affairs professional is that she has done an outstanding job of capturing educators in motion, in action, through digital engagement, and really just put some best practices together in one book. And it just was released, I think, 2 days ago. So very proud of Josie. Check this book out. And again, Katie and the whole Michigan Center for Student Success family, thank you so much for this opportunity.
And thank you. I'm feeling badly for all the limited time that I imposed on all of you. You could talk for a while, it seems like. We'll have to have you back. Thank you so much, Dr. Brownlee. Our next presenter is here from the University of New Mexico, Taos. And Dr. Valdez, do you still want to take the reins for the screen share? I think you do.
Let me try and do that, if you don't mind.
Yep, we'll do that. And I'm going to invite Sean, who is going to do your introduction, to step up as well while that's happening.
Yep.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Neumiller. I am at Lake Michigan College in Benton Harbor, Michigan. LMC is my home. I grew up in Southwest Michigan. I actually attended Lake Michigan College. So I've been at LMC since 2011 in various different roles. Currently, I wear a lot of hats. I'm English faculty. I'm also the English department chair, and I am our writing center director. So I do a lot. But I am very proud to be a community college faculty member, especially being a product of one. And I'm also proud to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Patrick Valdez. Dr. Valdez and I actually have a lot in common as I dig through his digital space in his bios. We are both first-generation college students. We both have educational backgrounds that span both private and public institutions. We work at institutions that have rural characteristics, and we all know that those rural characteristics have been exacerbated and highlighted during this COVID era, especially in terms of access to high-speed internet and reliable high-speed internet. We also care deeply about fighting equity gaps in higher education. Though we do have some differences. I'm a digital native and he is admittedly newer to the digital scene and exploring how much of ourselves we bring to digital spaces. He's also a U.S. Air Force veteran and is the recipient of the Rackham Merit Fellowship from the Center for the Study of Higher and Post-Secondary Education at the University of Michigan. He is currently focusing his research on policy formation of Hispanic serving institution legislation and the role that Hispanic serving institutions will play in educating the nation's fastest growing student population. So please help me give a warm Michigan welcome to the Chancellor of the University of New Mexico, Taos, Dr. Patrick Valdez.
Thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate that. And thank you, Katie, for all the work you've done with us the last few weeks to get us prepared. I will say that I've got several slides. I will not, and I have some videos embedded, but I won't be going through each one of those because I know our time is limited, but I also know that you'll be sharing these so people can get a chance to go through them later. But so I'm going to be on the complete opposite side of Dr. Mordecai, who I'm a big fan of. He had something like 25,000 followers. So I've got like 245 maybe and counting. So, I just sent out my handle. So, if you're on and, you feel like giving out some charity today, I'm going to see how much we increase the following. But I'm going to take the approach that I'm taking is kind of a newbie. So I think it was a Sheila a while ago at the beginning mentioned, not having an account, not sure how to use it. I'm taking that approach. This presentation is for all the newbies, all the chancellors or presidents or leaders out there that are trying to dip their toes into the social media world, but not quite sure. So Dr. Mordecai is the professional. I'm kind of a novice. So let me just show you what I've been doing. And I'll try to zip through these, but I do have some videos I want to show. So if time permits, just let me know, Katie, give me a heads up. Okay, so the first thing I had to do is what is an examination of values. When you think about values in the real world, like what are they? And do they change in a virtual world? And I think that that's something that people don't think enough about. And I did. I had to like really sit with that for a second. Like, well, what are my values? And the reason that was important is because, I wanted to be able to show, what do I value as a chancellor, right? Because for me, students, most of us have talked about we're student-centered. So students are one of my greatest values. Community. is one of my greatest values as a community college. We often say as faculty members that we meet students where they're at in the classroom. As a community college, I believe it's imperative to meet the community where it's at as well. And so working hard to make sure that we're doing that. And then of course, culture, this is for each one of us as leaders to determine in terms of our regional and our location, but culture, where I'm at is a big part of who we are in this community. And so I wanted to value that. So these are things that in my social media world, I want to show that we value. And so I had to think about this. Does living in a virtual world increase the value of your values? Or does living in the virtual world increase the reach of your values? And I think that that's also an important question to have to ask yourself if you're getting into this space. And I sat with that and I thought, well, it doesn't, I have to think about this. So I'd ask you to think about that as well. So here's my journey into this virtual world as a chancellor. So where do I share them? First of all, right? There's these social media platforms where I share my values virtually, and not where do I share my virtual values. And I think that that's important. It speaks to what Dr. Mordecai was saying, like, when you're sharing things out there, they have to be who you are and what you represent. You can't say like, well, on the virtual world, I want to have a different me, but this is who I really am. And I think that for me, it helps to be connected in that way. So I would ask you to think about that. So, here's my Twitter and here's my Instagram. So that's the one thing you have to get used to. Don't be shy and start throwing your stuff out there. I'm like, here we are. Here's Twitter. Here's Instagram. I found Twitter to be more professional. Obviously, Instagram's kind of more personal, but I kind of use mine in the same way. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Of course, we also have a Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram that's UNM Taos, but those are connected to me as well. So I'm listing those. And I want to be, in my case, mine are official accounts. These are not personal accounts. So most of the things that I'm going to put out are going to be about UNM Taos, not about my own personal life. Although I think that that's probably not a bad thing to do, as Dr. Mordecai was saying. And a good friend of mine at one point encouraged me to get more social on social media, because she said you can be an actual role model to some of the things that Dr. Mordecai was talking about. And so I've started to dip a little bit into that, but I don't put, opinions are my own, because I'm still kind of worried about people taking that too seriously. So this is what we, jumped into a Facebook page, right? First and foremost, this is what that looks like. So, that was like the first thing that us grown-ups started getting into, and you knew that we invaded that space as soon as the kids left. All of my two daughters were like, well, I'm out of Facebook, and everybody else. And we also have our UNM Taos Facebook page. It looks a little bit like this. And then we encourage our faculty and our staff and our departments to also have social media pages. And I found that by being engaged myself in social media, it kind of gives them permission as well to go out there, and encourages them to also jump into that space. And so this is a page of our digital media arts program and our Taos Education and Career Center, which works with our high school equivalency program and our adult basic ed students. So these are examples of what their pages look like. But what does it look like in a virtual world? Like, how do I espouse my values virtually, right? So pictures, first and foremost, right? So, hey, there's a picture of our dean, Dr. Archuleta, one of our council members and one of our senators is in this picture here. And then we're celebrating that our students are graduating, because this is what we want our students to be doing, right? We want them to come and we want them to be successful and to graduate. And then over here to the right, you can never go bad with showing pictures of students, young kids who are graduating. We have a kids campus, and we highlight the great work that our faculty do there and our students are doing there. And then most importantly, we highlight our kids. These are the 4-year-olds. They're our littlest Lobos, and it's the cutest and shortest graduation ceremony that you'll ever be a part of. It's basically, congratulations, we're expecting great things. Go eat some cookies. So we share that with our community. Some cohorts of students that we have highlighting our graduates. What does value and community look like in a virtual world? Well, we can highlight things that we're doing with local businesses in terms of internship and scholarship opportunities. We want to get quotes from the president and the CEO of the local bank to push in the community that we're engaged. By the way, you're going to notice some COVID hair in there from me. So, if you see some long hair, that's what that's all about. What does value and culture look like? And so culture, so if you're from this area or you're the Northwest, one thing you'll know is that we value the landscape here. So this is a picture of the vista out here in northern New Mexico, the gorge, which is well known. John Dunn Bridge is down here. And then this is out there right about to do a shoot with our digital media art students. We're going to get up on an air balloon and take pictures of the landscape. So this is kind of celebrating the culture. A picture of here, me doing a parade for the fiestas, which celebrate our patron saints here in Taos. And then one of our local authors being on our campus, celebrating a book that he puts out called Lobito. It's a bilingual book that we help get the word out on and help sell. And it shares values and morals in we call them dichos and cuentos, which would also be considered proverbs. And it's a really cute book. And his name is Ed Cardenas, and he's a local author, and we like to celebrate him. How does increasing the reach of your community value look like? So when I say increasing the reach, what I'm talking about here is using now video. So now I'm stepping up the game and I'm starting, okay, let me record and put some things out there. And if you'll give me a second here, this will load up. And like I said, I won't play all of these because of time, but I do want to give you an idea, hopefully, of what this looks like.
Hello, I'm Dr. Patrick L. Valdez, CEO of the UNM Taos Branch Campus, and I'd like to welcome you to UNM Taos. There are many reasons for you to decide to come to UNM Taos. It could be the strong academic reputation of UNM. It could be that many UNM Taos graduates move on to top undergraduate, graduate, and professional schools. It could be that UNM Taos graduates get better jobs. It could be that you want a class where the instructor really understands you. It could be that UNM Taos is just the right size for you. It could be that UNM Taos.
I'll stop there because I know that we have time limitations, but just to give you an idea, so we started kind of playing with these, and I want to say this, and I'm very proud to say this. Every video that I show you is so I'm happy to show their work. Let's see, how does increasing the reach of your culture value look like? So again, now we're increasing reach. Remember, increasing that reach. So again, another kind of colorful picture that shows a mural that we did on our campus that celebrates the community and our native populations. This is a mural that was done last year, and so we wanted to make sure that the community and the students knew about that. Over to the right here, we have, again, celebrating our students and that we're trying to develop a college-going culture in this community, that we want everybody to know that college is not out of reach, that there's a place for them at UNM Taos. And then how do we increase the reach of our student value? Because that's really what we're all doing, right? Most important thing is our students. And so the best way to do it is have students say it themselves. And so again, I'll play something here quickly that will introduce you to our students. And again, just to highlight that our students, in the digital media arts programs are the ones who go out and film the students, create the scripts for these. And so we're real proud to get their work out there. And you just give me a second here, hopefully it'll load up. I do apologize if I'm talking a little fast and speeding through, but I wanted to make sure that I get through all the slides. So hopefully this will play here in a sec. There it is.
Well, my name is Julia Shang, and I'm a first-generation college student. There was a way for somebody like me from a low-income family.
I felt like, I was probably 35 when I started coming back to school, and it was really, I didn't feel like I had a lot of opportunity as far as jobs and career and just my future, and I didn't realize it was like a kind of a subconscious feeling of just not too much excitement about things. And going back to school, I just feel like opportunities are endless. It sounds cheesy, but I do feel like the more I go to school, and if I could get a master's degree, and there's just a lot of opportunity, and I could really choose what I want to do.
It brings me such joy just to hear both of them, because they're such great role models to me, to hear them say, we're proud of you, we're with you every step of the way. I think overall my
Division of Natural Resources at Taos Pueblo, so I still do a 40-hour-a-week job.
So again, not to cut the students short, but I know we're on time here, but I would encourage you to look at that. This basically is a video that represents our student population, the variety of students that we serve, the many challenges that they face and that they overcome, from those who are coming back, those that are in our Pueblo. And so we're always proud to showcase our students. And then there's the end of this presentation will be around getting personal virtually. So I think that I found a way to be personal with the messages rather than sending out a text, rather than sending out a picture. How do I use social media to share the great things that we're doing? And so the first time we did that was to put me on Twitter, get me on Instagram, and this is just an idea of what those look like. If you follow me on either one of those, you'll get this. And then I learned, and I'm always learning, is the power of retweeting and tweeting at people. And then, so you'll see here that on my Twitter that I pinned a tweet there that says celebrating National HSI Week. That's a huge deal. We're a Hispanic serving institution. And then I sent that to a few colleagues of mine that are doing research on HSIs and so forth. And then of course my Instagram is mostly information that we're doing, things that we're doing on our campus, but there is something there about 9/11 in remembrance. So somewhat personal. And then let's see what we have here. Again, apologies for the delay. We're getting through it though. This was me telling the community what we were going to do.
Hello, I'm
in the
Dr.
fall.
Patrick Valdez, Chancellor of UNM Taos. One of the greatest challenges facing colleges and universities across the country right now is what to do about the fall semester. Taking all these factors into consideration, I announced last week that UNM Taos will be offering the majority of our classes to online and remote platforms the rest of the summer and through the end of the fall semester. As a result of COVID-19,
So we use
in March,
that, and then I get a little bit more personal occasionally and show more pictures of me trying to get on air balloons with our students. We had to get that thing filled up, and that was pretty sweet. And then over here on the right, I used this one day to show, I think after about 5 weeks of Zooming, I put this picture up and it said, even my dog's tired and worn out from Zooming. And that was a picture I posted. Dogs and children tend to get a lot of likes. So, you know, if you're having problems with getting likes, you know, throw some of them on there. But mostly I wanted to use it to welcome people back and to say thank you to our community.
Hello, I want to send a quick message to wish you all a great start to the 2020 semester. If you're a student, we're so excited that you decided to enroll with us this fall, and make sure that you stay on track to complete your certificate or your academic degree.
But our greatest value is letting the students and the community know that UNM Taos is here to serve them. And the best way to do that is by throwing in a really cool pic down on social media that looks something like this. So thank you to all of you for tuning in. This is our staff and some of our students that are in there. And I know that you probably can't help but just love the beautiful landscape that you've seen throughout this presentation. But we're very friendly up in the northern part of New Mexico, up in Taos. And so we'll welcome you here anytime. Thank you so much for your attention.
And thank you. That was awesome. I appreciate it so much. And you're going to have a bunch of people from Michigan applying for jobs over there. So our bosses,
the temperature, the daily temperature.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Right. Okay. So I'm going to stop your sharing. I'm going to go back to sharing. And while I am advancing the slides, I'm going to invite our next MCSS mentor, Lisa Neinkark, to step up and take her part.
Hi, I'm Lisa Neinkirk, and I've been teaching at LCC, Lansing Community College, for most of the 21st century. Developmental reading and writing courses, as well as first-year experience and English as a second language. I also spend time working on Office of Diversity and Inclusion projects, as well as being a faculty fellow in our Center for Teaching Excellence. So if you've been recently followed by the LCC CTE, it was Lisa. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Steve Robinson, our president, for a few months. He has a rich community college career that spans almost 3 decades and includes teaching, management, and leadership. He is a lifelong educator who began his teaching career at Lansing Community College as an intern, teaching a freshman English course. Since then, he has earned numerous accolades for his contributions to higher education. I have time to highlight only a few. For example, in 2017-18, Dr. Robinson was an Aspen Institute Presidential Fellow and also served as a site evaluator for the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence. And he's also served as a co-teacher and facilitator for their strategic finance training for community college leaders. Additionally, has written in publications such as Forbes, The Atlantic, Inside Higher Ed, and Community College Daily. Moreover, Dr. Robinson has created online spaces for educators and students to voice their personal stories and opinions regarding the stigma associated with community colleges with the hashtag #NCCStigma. He's also created spaces for student voices to interact with him. At LCC, he has created Ask the President, a monthly video series, Hanging with the President, another video series, and a president's blog, as well as a presence in Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I am fortunate to have had an experience with Dr. Robinson in his first few months that showed me that he lives the value of authenticity and caring in a virtual world. My English students in summer completed a project on engaged learning spaces at LCC, culminating in writing letters to the president, which at that time was Dr. Robinson, who had only been with us 4 days. He took the time not only to read their letters, but made a detailed personal response in a 12-minute video, YouTube video to each of them. When he did this, my students saw the values of caring and authenticity come alive in the virtual world and were over the moon. Steve's the real thing. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Robinson.
Professor Neenkark, wow, that is like the nicest introduction I've ever had. It's nice to see you. We interacted, but you know, in COVID, there are so many of my new colleagues I have not had a chance to meet. What a kind introduction. It's so wonderful to be here and to be here with a great panel and a wonderful organization. I had the wonderful opportunity to be a part of this and say yes to it back when I was a president in Ohio. So it's kind of cool that I've landed in my home state with my old colleagues at the Michigan Center for Student Success. So thank you, all of you. And I'll be brief. And I was going to share my own slides, but they're already up here, Katie. Should I just do what we were doing before? That sounds great. Well, thanks for that introduction. I'm 2 months on the job here at just an incredible community college where I started my career. And I also want to say hello to some familiar names of Michigan Community College people that I see on the chat for my many years at Mott Community College. I want to talk to you today about our stigma campaign on Twitter. And I'm a little intimidated to be going right before my mentor and one of my heroes, Dr. Karen Stout, who I'm really looking forward to hearing from. So the first takeaway I'd like to tell you about is that I really think that we have a moment. We have an opportunity to make our value proposition about small class size, high transferability, wraparound services, and programs that are designed for market value because of our great teaching. And we can do this on Twitter, and I want to talk to you about that. The second takeaway is that the only way to combat this stigma or outdated, inaccurate ideas about community colleges is to address it directly. I'm going to talk to you about this 3-part theory I have. The stigma is real, it needs to be called out, otherwise it will persist. Rebranding is not going to work. Changing our name is not going to work. We have to directly engage this stigma. And the third takeaway is that this pandemic, this moment that we're in right now, really underscores our value proposition, and it accelerates our need to tell our story. This transition to local and online learning is a real disruption to higher education, and it's an opportunity for us in the open admissions to your college space. So I think that this work is even more important than it ever has been before. So we go to the next slide. So one day I had had enough of this. Like all of you as community college professionals, I've had a chip on my shoulder about the negative perceptions of our institutions, and you've heard many of them. And one morning in February, when I used to have a commute, I'm very fortunate now. I live on campus. I walk to work, but I used to drive from one part of Northwest Ohio to another at about 25 minutes in the car. And this phrase and this hashtag popped into my mind as I was traveling down the highway. We're proud to be a community college. We're not going to change our name. We're going to change your mind. And I really was not prepared for, I was very new to Twitter. I was not prepared for this tweet to take off. In fact, later that afternoon, the folks in our media department came up to the office and said, we need to talk because this is different. Can we move to the next slide? Katie, thanks. So go ahead and go through all the bullets. I developed what I call a 3-part theory of the stigma against community colleges. First, it's real. And if you do this work, you know it's real. Second, it's culturally constructed. It's not related to our quality. And the third is the only way to combat it is directly. And you know all the negative nicknames. 13th grade, when there was public smoking, it was high schools with ashtrays. Can we have the next slide? And pejorative nicknames. I have a new rule. I won't use the pejorative nickname of the institution where I am. My LCC colleagues know what it is here. I grew up in Metro Detroit, and a lot of my friends went to Only Chance College, which is one of the best community colleges in the country. My former college had a nasty nickname that the snotty high school students called it. We just have to move past that. So next slide. But why call it a stigma? From a marketing standpoint, and this is one of my favorite books about marketing, Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. Stigma is a sticky term. You can use negative, unflattering. That never got anybody's attention. Hashtag NCC stigma for some reason stuck. And I want to tell you a little brief history, a personal story about how stigmas can go away. So Katie, can we have the next slide? Very briefly, personal story. This is my favorite family snapshot. These are my late parents. They're in the middle. And then over to with the circle are my mom's parents. So this is my entire family tree. Sadly, everybody here has passed. But this picture was taken on the sand dunes of Silver Lake. So those of you, if there's anybody here from Muskegon Community College or up on the west shore, that you know where that is. My dad's parents didn't go to college, but my mom's parents were both physicians. And I like to use them as an example of stigma. They were both osteopathic physicians. And nowadays, you might not make any distinction between a DO and an MD. But in the 1930s, when my grandparents graduated from medical school, there was a huge stigma against osteopathic medicine. In fact, there were children on my mother's street who weren't allowed to play with her because her parents were osteopaths. I'm proud to tell you that stigma is gone. You go to the hospital here in Greater Lansing, you probably don't even pay attention to whether you have an MD or a DO. One other stigma about this picture. My grandmother was a rock star, one of my favorite people, and my grandfather would have told you that she's the one who got him through medical school. She was the smart one. She practiced medicine for about a year and then she stopped in the late 30s, early 40s, because there was a stigma against women working professionally at that time. In fact, I was surprised to learn that there were laws on the books during the Depression that prohibited women from working professionally. I'm glad that that stigma's gone. The stigma against community colleges can go away too. Next slide, please. So, and we can just go through all the bullet points. Thank you for driving, Katie. I really appreciate it. So how do we do this? We engage community college alumni and grads, use this social media hashtag. I'm going to give you a little formula that I use. I encourage everybody who's spent any time at a community college to list that attendance on their resume and their CV, put it on LinkedIn, put it on their bios. At every community college commencement, I wag my finger at the graduates, say, tell your community college story. My formula for doing this in the morning, it's part of my media diet in the morning, is to, I have to do this anyway for work, is do an environmental scan of the news, my news diet about community colleges. If I find a positive community college story, I find a notable quote, I attach the hashtag, and I put the link on. And if you go to my Twitter handle, @LCCPresident, you will see near daily aggregation of positive stories about community colleges. I've sort of appointed myself a one-person positive community college news aggregation service. Also, in April and Community College Month, we did a really interesting podcast. Audio production's a hobby of mine, and there is more than 10 hours of great interviews with community college students and graduates and presidents and faculty and wonderful things. So if we could go to the next slide, Katie. So yeah, blow through all those. So the idea is to aggregate and amplify. Take these stories, hold them up, show them for everyone, disseminate good research on technical colleges, and position us as solution providers. Go ahead, next slide. Here's a little thing about the podcast. Anywhere you find podcasts, the word stigma and community college, it'll come up. Apple, Stitcher. In fact, Katie was a guest on the show. A lot of people on the call were a guest on the show. If you love community colleges, you'll find these interesting. And then two last little pieces of data in the 30 seconds or so we have left. The National Association of College Admission Counselors does some data collection on perceptions. Let's take a look at this next slide, and we'll end there. There's still a high level of negative perception among parents and families. This is a depressing slide. Take a look at, well over half of parents and families and students hold some kind of stigmatized view about community colleges. But the next slide, which is the last one, admissions counselors don't. People who know what we are and have had experience with us don't have negative perception. So that's why I think social media is such a great opportunity for us to push back. And with that, I know I went really fast, but I wanted to be within time. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you, and anxious to learn more as we tweet back and forth, and really anxious to hear from Dr. Stout. So hello, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are rocking it. And I got to tell you, I saw your slides, which were so amazing. And I'm like, we are never going to stay on time. And you're all doing fantastic. I'm sorry that
timer.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sorry that I had to push you along and that you may have some stress with that, but
nope.
You're doing wonderful, and this session is going very well. It's very dynamic. So thank you. We have one final featured speaker who I am excited about as well. That's one of the cool things about Twitter is sometimes that's how I met Steve as well. He was looking for people on the podcast, and I am a community college researcher in my grad program. And I said, sure, I want to be on your podcast. And then I was, and I similarly reached out to Dr. Stout on Twitter, and she very kindly got back to me and said yes, she would come. And not only would she come, but she would come while she was on vacation. So double thanks to you for being with us today while you're on vacation. I won't steal Lindsay's thunder. She has an introduction prepared, so I will ask Lindsay to come up and go for that.
Great, thank you, Katie. Good afternoon, all. I'm Lindsay Dickinson. I'm the Director of Academic and Career Advising at Northwestern Michigan College in Traverse City. I have personally had a long relationship with community colleges. My grandfather was the founding president at West Shore. My mom was the VP of Development at NMC, where I work now. And I attended NMC first as a dual enrolled student and then as a transfer student. So at my role at NMC, which has been about 10 years now, I've worked in admissions, international admissions, and now advising. And I actually came to Twitter for my job working with a small nonprofit organization in London focused on educating parents and teachers and students and government policy workers about internet safety. So I have now revived my presence after a bit of a hiatus on Twitter. I'm incredibly excited and a little bit starstruck, admittedly, to be introducing Dr. Karen Stout today. Dr. Stout, as many of you know, is president and CEO at Achieving the Dream, a role that she has more than filled since 2015. She's not only led the growth and expansion of ATD's national network of colleges, community colleges, but she's also exemplified what it means to be a champion for community colleges. And if you follow her on Twitter, you will see this firsthand. Under her leadership, ATD has expanded its network to include 32 tribal colleges and universities, such important work, and has positioned ATD as a vital partner in several different initiatives, which will sound familiar to many of you because you work on them every single day. Things like guided pathways, scaling advising redesign, developing zero textbook initiatives using OER, non-cognitive wraparound support system, and the list goes on. So Dr. Stout also comes from the community college world. She was president of Montgomery County Community College and held leadership positions at Camden County College. And she lives her values by focusing on strategies for enhancing student success and completion. I am very excited to introduce you today, Dr. Karen Stout.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, everyone. I admire the work that you're doing. I think this is the second time I've had an opportunity to speak as part of the work of the Commission in Michigan. Lindsay reminded me that I spoke, I think it was last January, about fundraising. And Lindsay and I have some other connections that she direct messaged me about earlier today. So I'm just really honored, Lindsay, that you were able to introduce me. Dr. Robinson, you did a fabulous job, and thanks for your campaign around ending stigma. You know, as leaders, we are our institution's chief storytellers. And I embraced social media in 2009 when I was president at Montgomery County Community College. A little bit ahead of my own marketing team back then. And I was experimenting, and that experimentation presented a few dilemmas, as you might imagine. Some were a little difficult to move out of, and others were just blind luck. One was that I put out a tweet. One of my very first tweets was about a new program we were starting at the college to offer free education for unemployed workers. See, this is 2009, so think about the Great Recession. And that was a novel idea at that point, and it caught the attention of CNN. The tweet caught the attention of CNN. So within a week, we had CNN on campus with their cameras and this big national story about how community colleges were really key to the recovery after the Great Recession. And as Dr. Robinson said, we're key again. So, you know, understanding social media, even pre-COVID, from my perspective, is essential for today's leaders to amplify their own voices and the voices of their colleges, and especially to engage with key stakeholders in new and dynamic and real-time ways. So the question is not, should I have a presence? It is, how should I have a presence? And how does that presence connect with institutional brand building and thought leadership and your own personal brand leadership and thought leadership? So I want to step back for a second from thinking about a specific digital content strategy, like using Twitter, to moving back to a larger idea about having the ability to develop ideas and to present ideas. Just simple, you know, communication. And I try to anchor my own communication strategy around a simple 3-letter acronym, a concept that I learned in co-presenting with Professor J.D. Schramm at Stanford as part of the Aspen program, where I first met Dr. Robinson. And the 3 letters, or the acronym, is AIM, A-I-M. Audience, intent, message. Who am I speaking to? How do I want to be perceived? And what am I trying to say? And I try to use that framework to guide everything that I put out into the world. Honestly, that framework forces me to stop and to sometimes think between the stressor and my reaction, because I think AIM, audience, intent, message. It's part of my mindfulness practice when it comes to communication in some respects. So I aim before I hit send. You know, as a CEO, I think about my organization's digital strategy, Achieving the Dreams digital strategy, as well as my own digital strategy. So I want to talk for a second about my Achieving the Dream work. And my cat, Fifi, who is a star on social media, if you follow me, may soon come on the screen because she loves when I'm on Zoom. So how would I ever know that without COVID? So Achieving the Dream quickly is a network of 277 primarily community colleges across the country. And we touch more than 400 community colleges with our work. And Lindsay gave you an idea of what we do. And we're deep into the work around student success in Michigan. And we have lots of networks within networks and many constituent stakeholders that we need to reach with our social media strategy. Presidents, faculty, IR officers, chief information officers, press, influencers, colleague associations and partners, funders, etc. And so we primarily use Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But during COVID, you know, we've really tried to expand our digital footprint. We've been, and we could probably put some of these resources in the chat function, because I did not do a PowerPoint, and I think that one of my colleagues is listening in, and maybe she can populate some of these. We've been doing virtual town halls, and we have many resources that have come from those virtual town halls. We have a adaptive learning series that we've been doing, and we have a whole social media campaign to create presence around all of those. We've found through the virtual environment and the social media opportunities that we've been able to expand our audience beyond our network colleges. So it's made us think strategically about, do we want to be an open network or a closed network? And that's something that, I think without COVID, we would not have really thought about. We had 1,000 faculty on our first webinar on teaching and learning, right? It was, I think, the last week of March. Much of it promoted by social media. Individually, I use Twitter and LinkedIn professionally, and I also use Instagram and Facebook personally and professionally. And I do have a blog where I try to position some thinking on thought leadership, but I use each one with different aim goals. And as I've reflected on comments today, I was not on Instagram or Facebook until I came to Achieving the Dream. When I was a college president, I really kept my social media presence to Twitter and LinkedIn. But I think there is a life cycle of engagement as you get deeper into your professional career, where you begin to think differently about connections. And certainly for me in COVID, social media has been a way to stay connected with colleagues and with trends that I feel like I would be really lonely, frankly, without the opportunity to have the social media. And maybe I'm saying too much by admitting that. But a couple of things for personal. I try to create my Twitter posts in a way where I can have two-way communication. So sometimes I'll ask a question at the end of something and there'll be replies, and many times the replies are not public replies on Twitter, but they can be direct messages that have set up some very interesting possibilities for my organization. Secondly, I use Twitter for intelligence gathering. To me, it's a listening tool. I understand college pain points from Twitter. I can pick up trends, which then can inform the services and supports my organization offers to the colleges in our network. I use it to research, to pull research from key thought leaders, think tanks. I use it to gather sentiment about events that ATD is hosting, for example. We have a big dream event. I can really get a sense of whether we've hit the mark or not by following the social media. I use it for prospecting, looking at different funding opportunities. I use it for stewardship, competitor analysis. So to me, that there's so much to gain professionally by being involved and on Twitter. I also want to emphasize a couple of points that you've heard today about authenticity. Once you move to and on to Twitter, what I have found is that I have to be accessible. So I'm putting a thought out there, and for it really to land and to be a thought leader in the field, I have to respond. I have to be accessible. And that's really an important part of being authentic. The other thing is managing my own account. So I've always managed all of my own social media, college president, and even now at ATD. No one else manages my account. I know there are pros and cons and risks and benefits to that, but that's part of my own personal value about being authentic. Another question you might ask is, how do you have time to do this? It becomes an integrated part of the way that I think. In the morning, I get up, I browse, typical things that I'm reading, and I hit some of the key people that I follow on Twitter, and it just sparks thinking. In addition to that, I'm trying to amplify some of the work of Achieving the Dream. So there's a natural pattern to some of what I do tweet. If you've looked at my posts on Twitter, you see that I try to amplify the work of colleagues. This week, I was participating in a forum with Advanced CTE. I think that's important for the field to show the collaboration that's happening across many of the nonprofit organizations. I celebrate student stories. I celebrate presidential accomplishments, celebrate institutional accomplishments within the colleges in our network. I do a lot of knowledge sharing of reports, research reports that ATD has accomplished, or other partners. And I do try to show a little bit of my personality. That's been something that I've lived into a little bit, and I'm a little bit more confident in it now than I was when I was a college president. You know, this position is national, different in some respects, and maybe a little more freeing. So you will see Fifi, my cat, occasionally. Sometimes I'll post that I went for a run. What I'm reading, you can see my summer reading list that's out on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. I love frameworks. So in closing, I want to give you another framework to think about. It's TWEET, very easy to remember, TWEET. T is for target, understanding and having a goal for what you're doing with your Twitter account. To me, I want to make meaningful interactions. I want to use it to listen, as I said earlier, and I want to use it to share. So those are just a couple of my goals. W is around writing. Who it will write, what will you write, how often will you write, kind of thinking about that. The first E is for engage, learning how to use hashtags, lists, replies, retweets, just some of those mechanisms within Twitter. E is for explore. That's how will you use it to search for the work that your college is doing, the work that you yourself might be doing, and finding new opportunities and new things, new pieces of curiosity to keep you moving. And T is for track. We haven't talked about this, but you have to figure, are you hitting your mark? There are a lot of Twitter analytics. We could have a whole session in that, but really trying to think about, how are you evaluating your effectiveness? A couple of books, Twitter for, you're not gonna be able to see it because of my background. Twitter for Good, Change the World, One Tweet at a Time. Great resource. There's one for higher ed called Follow the Leader, Lessons in Social Media Success from Higher Ed CEOs. And I'll try to get these to Katie so she can get these back to you. And then one that I just pulled off my bookshelf, Twitter Power, How to Dominate Your Market, One Tweet at a Time. Last piece of advice, find a Twitter role model. Look for somebody inside higher ed and outside higher ed. A couple of my Twitter role models outside higher ed, Tim Ferriss, who has a whole system, I think, for the way he uses Twitter and then combines his newsletter and his blog. Connie Schultz, I just love how she blends information with personal tidbits, and her sense of humor is amazing. And then, inside higher ed, but not fully inside higher ed, but is Ibram Kendi. You have to follow him. He's exceptional on Twitter and on Facebook. So that's all I wanted to say. So I really, really appreciate it. And I think I have my timer, 4:15. I think, Katie, we landed like right on time. That's amazing.
You guys are incredible. Thank you, Thank you so much. And I got to tell you, the role model thing is so good, because another person that I invited to the session, Dr. Pam Eddington, I can't remember if it's Ettinger or Eddington, sorry, I always forget her last name, had to decline. She was going to be our 5th panelist, and she said, but make sure you get Karen Stout. And you had already agreed to participate. And she said, because that's who I want to be when I grow up. And I said, well, great news. I'm sorry you can't join us, but Karen is coming. So
she's my board chair at Achieving the Dream.
Okay, perfect. Super. Thank you so much. And it is Pam Ettinger. Thank you, yes. Sheila, in the chat. Thank you all so much. I'm going to do a little bit of administrivia. I am reeling a little bit from all of the good stuff that's come in this afternoon. Someone asked me in the chat to say the acronym of TWEET. Well, guess what? I just tweeted it. So I just copy and pasted the tweet that I just sent through the MCSS handle. My colleagues are like, how are you tweeting and handling the session? I don't know, but I'm at my best when I'm multitasking. So here we are doing that. And I'm going to go back to our screen share. Cool, that's working. I love it when the technology works. And I'm going to go over a couple more logistical items and let you know what's coming next. Because next is happy hour and I'm ready for a drink, folks. So I want to help you understand how to tweet chat. Some of you have participated in our tweet chats over the summer. When we did the tweet chats over the summer, we had a little like a placard that told you what to do. Well, I didn't make a placard for today. This is my placard. And I'm going to leave this up. We're going to take a quick, what I'm calling a mixology break, if you will. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'll leave this up for you while we're on break so that if you are new to this medium or new to tweet chatting, you can see what's going on. So there are two options for you at this juncture. Don't leave yet, but in a minute, you're going to have the choice to leave and just tweet with us or to stay in the Zoom. I have a cadre of supporters that are willing to stay in the Zoom and help some of you who maybe aren't so tweety. And they would love to assist you with any questions you have. I'm a big fan of no question is a dumb question. So please, if that's you, if you'd like to stay on the Zoom and get some feedback on your tweets or just even watch what's going on, the plan for me is I'm going to stay here. I'm going to screen share. I'm going to show you the Zoom or the Twitter thread. I'm actually going to take my slides down and we're just going to look at the Twitter thread together while we're having the conversation. So again, I'll be multitasking because I actually have another computer next to me where I'm going to be tweeting, and then I'm going to be showing you guys the thread, and we can talk through any questions or concerns or issues folks have. So you can choose to stay, or you can choose to head out on your deck with a beer and join us from your phone. I will encourage you in a minute, but not yet. As you say, I'm a Cub Scout leader, so I say that a lot during our PAC meetings. In a minute, but not yet. This is what we're going to do. You can go get your refreshments together. You don't have to drink. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to have a refreshment if you prefer. Put your sweatpants on, whatever's clever. I did email all of you yesterday and gave you a fair warning that if you don't have a profile, maybe it's time to create one. I will say you don't have to have a Twitter profile to enjoy the rest of our session. You can actually use that twitter.com/explore link and follow our hashtag to see what's going on your screen without having an account. You won't be able to converse with us. You won't be able to write any comments unless you have your own account, but you can take a look there to see what's happening if you prefer, or you can stay on the Zoom and watch it through my eyes. If you do decide to join Twitter, you should follow us at MCCA CSS. And I will be posting an icebreaker in a minute that you can respond to at any time. We find the icebreaker is kind of fun, especially if you're a new tweeter. It gives you a chance to try it out before we start asking real questions. I also, if you got my message yesterday, sent you the substantive questions that we're going to ask about this topic, this digital engagement topic. So hopefully you had a chance to think about some of those questions. I always pre-prepare my answers, but I have that luxury because I created the questions. So I do that so that I can engage more authentically and deeply with the people who are actually having the conversation while it's happening. But we would love it if you would actually reply to the questions by clicking the little comment button. It's the easiest way to stay threaded in the conversation. Now, some people like to retweet or answer questions differently. That's fine. It's a free country. Do your thing. But it is easier for us, and me particularly when I'm writing the summary of the chat, if you keep it in the comment box, because then I can represent what you've said and share it with folks. And we still invite you to use your own hashtags. We would love it if you could make sure that MCSS Summit 20 is on your tweets so that it gets threaded to our conference event. I will also tell you that I made a mistake. I requested graphics for the question cards and my hashtag is wrong on the graphics. So it says 2020, but it's actually only 120. So just don't get alarmed by that. It's just a mistake. And then we would love for you to add your own hashtags or use any of our other hashtags that we are trying to get going with the MCSS. And then talk amongst yourselves. That's the best part of this. We have asked our featured speakers to stay on and tweet with us. So this is a chance for you to talk with them, talk with the mentors, talk with the MCSS staff, talk with the other folks who are here. And don't forget, please, to evaluate the session before you check out for the weekend. And I, again, may ask one of my colleagues to drop that line, that link into the chat box to make sure that folks know how you can Erica has already done it. Who is shocked by that? Not me. Thank you so much. And I'm going to, like I said, go ahead and put myself on mute. I already got my drink ready in the fridge, so I'm just going to pop the top. And I will be back here in just a minute. We are officially on our mixology break, and we will come back around 4:30. So you got about 10 minutes, and then we'll go tweet on Twitter, chat on Twitter. That's what I meant to say. See you there soon.